everybody. This is Laurie Handlers, and you're listening to another episode, and watching perhaps, another episode of Sex and Happiness, a show about your sex and your happiness. And today I have two guests. I'm featuring one of them, and the other one is somebody who I've featured many times. So this is Michael Gibson, my partner in life, sometimes my partner in crime. No, I haven't commit any crimes yet. And this is Gil Oren, my other guest, who is my featured guest today. And Gil is going to be speaking to us. I may call him Gilly. He has a nickname with an I, Gil with an I on the end, and sometimes he goes by that to people who know him. So anyway, Gil Oren is one of the creators and founders of a program called Remember. It's like the word remember, only the mem gets changed into men. Remember. And it's a program for men. It's a program in the wild. It's a program in the jungle. It's a program in the wilderness. And we're going to talk about that and what's grown out of it, and why it might interest you, those of you who are my listeners and guests. So Gil, welcome to Sex and Happiness.
Thank you, Laurie and Michael. So good to see you.
Thank you.
Appreciating the invitation. Absolutely.
Thank you.
So great to have you here. I'm excited to be here.
I'm glad to. You haven't been on in a while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before we get started into what is Remember, which is so very, it's a really great title of a course. Gil, how did you get to be Gil? How did you find your way into men's work and to really wanting to empower men right now in this crazy world of ours? Did you start out like this? Was this always an interest of yours, or what? Give us a little bit of your background.
Oh, I think most of my life, if I can look at it, comes from pain and desire. So I would say that's more like the spiritual karma of where I'm at. I just turned 50 in March. If I look back at my life, it always had an aspect of masculine energy and brotherhood. I grew up, my father was an army officer, a very, very successful business leader. I have two siblings, two brothers, male buddies. And, I always grew up playing out with boys and challenging myself. Then I was a professional athlete. I got into the youth academy in Israel as a soccer player, and really did that. And then, as every young man in Israel, I was drafted, and I chose to volunteer to an elite combat unit where it was really brothers in arms. And I could have this experience that we can just talk for hours just about the experience of brotherhood in the army, with its shadow and light. And then I went actually into business and business leadership for the next 25, almost 23 years. So if I look back, and then, I would say in my mid-30s, that was the first time I was more consciously being introduced when the David Data's evolution started. And I met David 15 years ago in North Carolina, in a workshop of 75 men. And that made a huge impact on me.
So let's stop there for a second so that people, not all my listeners, I mention David Data a lot in my work because he has some things to say. That the first book,
The Way of the Superior Man.
The Way of the Superior Man, thank you. That book has made a huge difference to every man that I know. That's David Data has a lot to say about that. So you actually went to a workshop with him with how many? 75 men?
We were 75 men from all over the world. It was actually the last time, it was early 2006, the last time that he facilitated a men-only workshop. I think this year, he was opening it up again, but he was mostly working with co-ed after. And again, I'm in my mid-30s. I was in New York City. I was a founder and owner of a toy company. I was married. I had a lot of challenges in intimacy. I had a lot of challenges in purpose. everything outside seemed perfect. I lived the American dream, but my soul was actually empty, and I felt like such. It was agony. It was just that friction inside, that inability to actually hold that. Can you see me? The
Yeah.
inability to hold both polarities, where like I'm living the most successful life I dreamed of. At 35, I had $1 million house, luxury cars, office in New York City, truly doing that, married. And at the same time, there was such a desire and longing of my soul for more understanding, more expansion. And I met David in this workshop, and we started a men's group in the city, spin-off, with one of his assistants, Eli Buren, a really interesting man that worked with us for a few months, and then we kept going. And that made a huge impact on me, that just meeting men in that space of honesty and vulnerability and challenge. And yeah, so we did that for almost 12 years. And within that, I continued my own, mostly started doing conscious sexual work. It was the days of One Taste and Nicole Dayton in New York City. And it was
We missed each other. I'm just going to tell you that we missed each other because I did Nicole's first or second course in New York City, and
I'm sure you did.
And I also went to see David Data when he was presenting at some big hall in New York City, and it's like, it was like who's who in the world of sacred sexuality was in that room, that night when David was there. So
so it was kind of
how did we miss each other in New York? That's all I'm thinking,
Well, we had to wait for Easter.
Yeah.
But I mean, that kind of like the energy of dropping more and more into the masculine energy and getting more and more into my body in this experience with brothers. And now, moving more into I would say, more challenging and confronting sexual spaces. And One Taste was a very confronting, but incredibly growing experience.
Mm-hmm.
Orgasmic meditation, and I did their coaching programs, and I did the intensive with Nicole in LA for 10 days, and was very fortunate to be part of that initiation over 2 years between 2014 and actually 2017. And then Easter, exactly then, February 2017, meeting you and Frank, and in Costa Rica, and having such a huge awakening, and also seeing the places where I still need to grow a lot, in my places of insecurity and jealousy and fear and not trusting the feminine and not following my desire. There was a lot.
Yeah.
And then level 2 and assisting 1 and 2, and we did PT, and to remember, we were sitting, the 4 of us, in my house in Costa Rica. You guys, Laurie, you haven't been in my house yet, right?
I haven't been there yet, but after this interview, we're going to have a little talk about that. I'm going to Costa Rica. I love Costa Rica. So we're going to talk about that a little bit.
Pura vida.
So in 2015, I went down to Costa Rica to do a cleanse with Pachamama, and fell in love with the land, and decided that my soul wants to build a sanctuary. And I called it a sanctuary for the human soul. And then when the Ista tribe came, they added for the human animal as well. So now it's a sanctuary for the human animal and soul. And I'm developing now it as a retreat center for 20 to 25 participants, because that's been the emergence of it. But we were sitting there after Ista level 1. I assisted. It was Frank, Nimai, and Philippe. And Nimai actually was having a vision of creating a men's journey. And I think it came from his desire to connect deeper, and his wound with his father. And we were invited by Nimai and Frank, Philippe and I, and it was a fuck yes. And this journey just started kind of a hangout on my balcony in nature, naked, and just 4 brothers. And I think what really inspired us was the way we were relating to each other. I think that. How men relate to each other in the Ista tribe after we go through the initiation. And we thought that only this code, by the way our bodies relating to each other, with allowing the energy to move, allowing the feminine to move, the eros and the energy, and celebrating that, And obviously all the codes and wisdom we had to share, we can create something and meet brothers.
So
That's what it started.
We're going to stop right there. Like at the start of Remember, we're going to take a little pause. And
Yes,
then
please.
when we come back, we're going to actually talk about Remember. We're going to talk about what some of it has to do with. We're going to talk about your experience of it, because Michael then went to Costa Rica this past year. And, well, we were in Mexico, and I was leading ISTA, and Frank was co-facilitating with me, and Frank said to Michael, hey man, you're in Mexico, you might as well, and you're going down to level 2 in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Might as well just do Remember what, and Michael. Okay. So we're talking about Remember, which is a workshop. I don't know whether to call it a workshop. It's a retreat.
It's a journey.
A journey for men, and it may seem a little obvious that it's remember. It's kind of like remembering who you are. That's how I take it. But I wasn't there. I'm not in a man's body. I could be a fly on the wall, but I wasn't there. So Gil, you want to talk? So you birthed it, the 4 of you: Philippe, Lewis, Nimai. I don't know Nimai's last name. Gil, Oren, and Frank Mondoze. And so what really does it aim at? What do you aim at in Remember? Or what's the dream of the outcome?
I can share my personal story and perspective about that.
Yeah.
Sorry, give me a minute. I want to shut the door here so we have more privacy.
So I'll ask Michael. Well, you're doing that. I'll ask Michael. So Michael, you went to Remember.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm with you. So what I would say is, what I notice when in work with men, there's kind of 3 stages. David Data speaks about other stages, as we know, stage 1, 2, and 3. What I'm talking about is the first stage is that stage where there is a desire or there is something in the soul that says, oh, there is more to my experience in a male body. And it's like, oh, okay. And I think someone I'm saying that will go read a book, maybe buy The Way of the Spirit of Men, maybe join a local men's group, maybe even go take an online program. The second stage is when you actually start awakening to what's going on. There is kind of a step back, and you start looking at all the archetype of man and the conditioning and the programs and the place where you were at. And you're starting to have for the first time a choice of what kind of a man you want to express. And what, in my opinion, and Remember is actually something that I call the next exploration. It doesn't have to be an evolution, but some people it's what I call brotherhood, from manhood to brotherhood. And it has a different flavor and different energy. And I think Remember has this design to drop men from their unconscious patterns and behavior to their archetypes that they actually have more freedom to choose, to like that primal experience of brotherhood and safety that is more tribal that we forgot. And I think that it's a well-designed program that takes you through the integration of what it feels. And maybe Michael, you can have a comment on your experience.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I mean, I remember in our course or in the journey, it was a lot of integration. It was a lot about integrating what you're calling manhood and actually coming back to the land, like returning to the land as a man, returning to what it means to be a man, and then integrating that into a brotherhood. So it was just really a sweet movement. I remember actually being able to integrate my masculine, which is the manliness of men, with my feminine, which was a surprise for me. But it was really powerful. It was integrating all of that, and then also being able to have that as a sacred relating to other men as a brotherhood.
Excellent.
Thank you. I'm so happy you had this experience. I remember the moment that morning when Frank did shamanic breathwork, and I was part of the the practice. And I remember that moment when I felt inside the marriage of the masculine and feminine, like for the first time integrated in my body. And it was like, there was a level of freedom that I haven't experienced. And I think we at Remember actually take men to the edge and the places of lack of, like what actually the places of fear and the lack of safety. So we can relax because we are so held in those places of shame and shadow and guilt and fear and the places where men actually are not completely relaxed and open to relate because it hasn't been safe. And from that then, as I'm saying, we can just relax into a level of brotherhood where you are just loved.
Yeah.
There's just nothing to do than being yourself and the expression of love from other men. And that's always like the last day of the celebration in my house when we just all like together in nature, in our primal bodies, just relaxing. And those moments for me, when I see a few men just being there with each other, are just the most rewarding and worth everything.
Yeah.
I've seen pictures of that. I've seen pictures of a group of men sitting at your infinity pool.
Yeah.
Like sitting with all their naked bodies, the back of them, this line of men. And I think, these beautiful men, like so, yeah, like so beautiful and so willing to explore places that for men have been taboo. And I'm not talking about necessarily sexually relating. I'm talking about just sitting around naked with a bunch of men, like feeling to breathe and be in nature and feel the connection between them without being like homophobic or weirded out or, you know, I don't trust this guy. Like, it's so needed and so necessary. I feel like men are so isolated.
Yeah.
Like so lost, like what you were saying, like you were a total success in New York City. Like most people can't even boast that. Like to be a success in $1 million home with luxury cars with an office in New York City, that takes a tremendous amount of accomplishment. Most people can't make it in New York City. They're waiting tables and they're trying to be discovered by somebody, you know, on Broadway. And here you are, you had that and you're going like, there's emptiness. There's something missing. I don't know what it is, but there's a missing. And then that led you to the various experiences that you had. And that's, a lot of people wouldn't give that up. They wouldn't dare risk that picture perfect thing, you know, like I made it. And I made it in New York, and you know what the song says? If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. Like, I mean, I had that for myself in New York, but I'm not a man. So I feel like that's like an amazing tower of success. And then to say, that's not it. And Gil, that's what you did.
Yeah, thank you. And you know, I think the sad or the shadow part of it is the amount of midlife crisis and depression and suicide of men in their late 30s and early 40s. It's actually the most depressed, broken group in this society. It's because of that. It's because the belief in those external ideas that were given to us, and then just not being able to sustain it. And that's where the invitation is, to actually come and just have a healing experience, just relax together. There's nothing to remember, there's nothing to achieve or do or heal. It's just actually, let's create an experience together that will help us remember. And that's how the journey is designed. And naturally, you know, we all come with a lot of background of facilitation and workshops and codes that we do offer a lot of practices, really epic practices, and a lot of points of connection and a very strong container. Because the masculine container allow that. And what's really interesting, like what Michael said, is that we get an experience of people say, oh, my feminine haven't been so relaxed. We're like, let's be the most like wild men in nature, you know, being together, and then there is this experience of the feminine that we never have. And you maybe can testify by that, Laurie, because you work with so many men and women in those spaces. Like, what is it actually in a man that need those masculine parts and actually the feminine gets so nourished?
Well, I can
don't
say,
know.
I can
Yeah.
say something about this. I mean, I work with a lot of men, and a lot of times some men have an idea that there's a feminine in there that doesn't get, that hardly gets to breathe. And some men are not so aware of it. I feel like this man, may I speak about you for a moment?
Oh yeah.
This man, this man is so masculine, like he is so like masculine, that it allows my feminine to come out more. And that's only since ISTA, because in ISTA I realized like she was safe for the first time in forever. And then what I realize about him is that he's receiving more, he's open to receiving and softening more and more. And it's subtle with Michael. He's not, you know, Michael, you know, you're definitely a man's man. And then there's some subtleties where you're open to receiving now, you're open to sweetness now in a way that, you know, I love being sweet with you and then seeing how sweetness affects you. And it's really, it's
Quite nice.
It's so beautiful. In my life, I never dreamed.
Well, you know, let me speak to that a little bit, because one of the things that I think is missing in men is the ability to be intimate with other men, not in the sexual sense, but in the sense of here's another man. And the intimacy that I would have had with my father, had my father been around when I was young, was lost in my childhood. The intimacy and that taught me that, or at least I didn't have a sense of intimacy that I could have with other men in a brotherhood, in a way of caring, in a way of being, you know, someone who is protective and, you know, sharing in that. And it's easy to have intimacy with women for different reasons. But for men, I think we've missed or we've lost that ability to actually be intimate with our brothers. And so that really was delivered in a big way in that journey in Costa Rica. It was amazing. Some of the stuff that we got to do, like, awakened that in me. And so when she says I'm able to be sweet, it's because I now know what it means to be intimate with a man in a way that has me be still in my body, still in the masculine, still heterosexual, all those things. And yet I still had this experience of intimacy, and it blew my mind. It's pretty powerful. And I think it makes me more masculine.
And that's a beautiful, I think the parenting piece you just brought is really, really unique. You know, I've seen throughout the last 2-3 years in being on this journey and leading and facilitating, but also being so impacted by the intimacy with men, the relationship with my 2 boys. I have a 21-year-old and a 16-year-old. And my 16-year-old just broke up with his girlfriend after 2.5 years last weekend. And he allowed me to hold him in his pain and crying, just really like hold him and caress him and touch him. And that just like, it was just like, you know, it's a shamanic experience for a father. I mean, he's like, you know, we know 16 boys, 16, you know, and he's in the public system in the US. It's not like, you know, he's in nature in Costa Rica. Like, he's like, you know, in that total programming of the culture. And yet, you know, that experience of just holding your sons, and yeah, they're just another huge reward. And that these things are priceless. I mean, what else do we desire?
It's beautiful. It's beautiful, yeah. Gil. Michael's also having some breakthroughs with his son, who's in his 20s, and I mean, every little baby step is big, because they didn't have anything, and his son's very difficult to reach. But he's tough enough to provide role modeling, but he's sweet enough now to like find roads into him and have him be less fearful and have him be more trusting and all these things. So, and his son is also a father, so it's very important that they It's
That's awesome.
super important that they bridge this,
In
really.
case you're wondering, that makes me a grandfather.
The sexiest grandfather I know.
Well,
Yeah,
I'll take that.
Laurie, that's such a good point, and I think that what we do at Remember, but also ISTA, our ability to stay in connection with other men and women in those really challenging places allow us to stay, like my son know that no matter what, I'm there, like solid, steady. He can project on me all his anger and pain and fears and reject me, and I'm just there, like there. And so at some point, he's like, oh, you know what, actually I don't need to keep doing that. Maybe we can just have fun and love each other. But I think if I would reject him in that and put like that, it's not respectful, or it's not like whatever, then that expression that he cannot, he will actually hide the light too. So I think that's what we learn. We stay in connection with men around shame and around, as you said, sexuality, and around trauma, and around the things we hide, and around the way we meet in emotional release. And we stay in connection and we move through that to love. And that just experience in the body, yeah, it just goes everywhere.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to take another break here. When we come back,
okay, cool.
We're going to see if there's any last thing something you really wanted to say that everyone must hear, but from both of you. And then we'll find out how do people find Remember. I'm like, as you're talking, I'm just going to say before we go to break, I'm thinking of someone who needs to do it immediately.
Awesome.
And so I will be telling
Thank
him
you, Laurie.
he needs to do it immediately. I'm actually coaching his son right now.
Okay.
And so I'm thinking to myself, oh, yes, this person needs to go to Remember. So he can actually be there for his son. Like his son needs that. So is there anything we forgot? Is there anything we should say about Remember that somebody needs to know, like a key point that we forgot?
I have something.
Go ahead, Michael.
Go ahead.
If you don't mind. The
Yes,
one thing that the thing that I think is most important to really get about the live experience is how rugged, how really in the earth, and how in the center of man it touches. That journey is it's rugged, it's tough, it forces you to pull something out of you in order to have the experience. It's confronting. It is not, don't take it lightly. I would say it is something that will transform you from the inside out. And it is a place, like it's like the cauldron that you stir all that shit up in order to really transform through alchemy, like who you are as a man. It is shamanism. Like, that's what I would say.
Thank you. Gil, anything else? Anything you want to add to that?
I'm feeling that it was the peak experience of this podcast. Thank you, Michael. So
Yeah.
that
All right,
that
Gil.
was beautiful. Less is more here.
It's great, Gil. So tell us how one goes about finding out about Remember, and we also have a code somewhere. Yep. All right, so how do people make their initial contact?
Or Remember was designed in nature, in the wild, because as the understanding that that's a space where many men are missing the connection to the land, the connection to, due to the circumstances of life lately, we actually been experimenting, and we have created a lot of beautiful intimacy online too.
Oh yeah, due to those.
And in men's groups, in holding our community, we were part of a big event last weekend, the Integrated Masculine. And we are launching mid-July. It's a very unique opportunity. First Steps to Remember, July 17th to 19th. You can find it on my Facebook page. It's rememberjourney.com. Definitely has access to all our events. So the next opportunity, it's a weekend event, 4 hours a day, first steps to remember. I think Michael can give more information, and we also have a special for you guys as an affiliate. That's the next opportunity. Then our next workshop in nature will be in Canada, in Montreal, before ISTA level 1 and 2. And it is being organized by Philippe and Frank. Frank as a local Montreal Canadian, and Frank as the organizer of Remember Journey.
Okay, good. And for
And, yeah.
Frank is also an ISTA facilitator, an ISTA lead facilitator with me, ISTA being the International School of Temple Arts. That's actually how we all met. It's not how Michael and I met, but it's how you and I met. It's how I met Philippe at an ISTA event. I met Nimai at an ISTA event. I mean, that tribe is how most of us met together.
Yeah.
Yes.
Michael, do you want to give people this? Is this too long of a
No,
coach?
I got it.
Okay.
It's actually really simple. So if you know how to get to, sex and happiness or anything like that, you go to lauriehandlers.com. So here is the link. You'll go to Remember, REMENBER. So mem, like remember, as Laurie stated, but the MEM is a MEN. So remember.lauriehandlers.com. That's all you got to do. Remember.lauriehandlers.com, and you'll be able to go and get all the information you need. You'll find out what the tuition is, everything else really straightforward.
That's great. And I highly recommend that you do it. First of all, during this pandemic, as far as I'm concerned, you got nothing else to do except grow.
Get your life.
I mean, there are people during this pandemic who are like having gloom and doom and woe is me. And a lot of people that I know are using this as an opportunity. That my friend Frederick Swan sings a song called Another Fucking Opportunity for Growth. And so this pandemic is another fucking opportunity for growth. And so you might as well do it, because what else are you doing? What else better do you have to do? Write that book, do that growth, do the things that you've always put off. This is the time. That's what we're doing.
I agree. We just did the Tantra Meet BDSM with you, me and my partner, Kelly. Oh my God, what a journey. Woo. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's totally a game changer for us.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. So that's it. I mean, we've been doing, usually I'm on a plane every other week. I come home, I do the laundry, and I put the clothes back in a suitcase, and off I go into the wild blue. And since this thing has happened, I've been home and I've been busier and creating. This has been like they call it the pause, the global pause. This for us has been a pregnant pause. Like we have birthed so many things during this time, and little by little we're dripping them out into our environment, and new things are being created. So this is what people, like literally, if you were putting off growing, now would be a really good time to have a growth spurt. So
yeah, and I think for staying home and the value you get in terms of money today on those events, like you get the best facilitator for, I don't know even how much compared to travel and workshops, and so it's amazing.
It's half. You can get our programs, Extraordinary Lovers, for half what they usually are, because it's like a twofer. You get two people coming in on the screen for the price of one. Om and my courses are half price. Usually it's a big price for one person, and we've been inviting two for the price of, and you don't have to go on the plane, and you don't have to pay for the accommodations and the food. You're home. We actually see everyone eating on their screen. So, but the thing is, it's also more international. Like what's happening because of this need to get on the screen with everyone. In our first course, we did it like our course happened like 2 weeks after the pandemic started.
Right. Yeah.
Our first course, we had people from 7 countries. We were supposed to be in Israel, doing it in Israel that weekend. And so we had people from Israel, Switzerland, Germany, Canada, Mexico, the United States, and one more. We had 7 countries.
Berlin?
I said Germany. England.
England.
So we had 7 countries represented on screen, with 22 people, and we were just like,
it's amazing.
we were blown away, and that people stayed up half the night, and they were, you know, in this last course, we had people from
Like
Japan.
we had to Tokyo until 5 a.m.
Yeah, they stayed up all
They
night.
had sunrise when we were, yeah.
It was
That's
amazing.
right.
Yeah.
We got on.
We woke up in Boulder at 6 a.m. to start.
Yeah, I woke up at 4 because we started at
Oh my
5
God.
for here.
Yeah.
And then when we woke up at sunrise, and then the course was ended and it was sunrise for them. It was so crazy. All right. So anyway, everyone listening, thank you so much for being my guests. We are going to sign off in a moment from Sex and Happiness. I just want to let you know again, remember is something really worth checking out, especially for those of you who are looking around for men's work and you're not really sure, and for people who've been in men's groups for a while. This is a very unique group of facilitators, international group of facilitators, and you may find something here that you haven't found in your local men's group. Check it out. Remember, at least go to the online program, First Steps to Remember. This is Laurie Handlers. I want to thank Michael Gibson and Gil Oren for being my guests.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
I
you.
love you. Have an amazing weekend.
Thank you. Thank you.